Hello, chicos and chicas. Welcome to the Amateur's Mind, which is seemingly the only thing that interests a large number of people. So I decided to chuck in another one. Today we are going to discuss an interesting thing in the Sicilian that seems to confuse pretty much every single student of mine. But beyond that, let me untangle my mouse. That's a very good thing to do when you have got a computer mouse. But beyond that, I think that a lot of club level players struggle with this, and that is basically the idea and concept of what to do in the Sicilian when black plays e5 in virtually any given time. And it seems to me that people try to memorize their lines like mad instead of trying to understand what is going on. So the whole reason why I'm doing this, by the way, is because I found a student video. Ironically, I seem to find the exact same student and his games to shred them apart, or almost a select few who becomes a victim of this. But I hope that they appreciate the fact that they get a feedback this way, as well as the lessons that we do usually have. So this starts off with a regular Sicilian that can now go into Scheveningen, can go into Najdorf, can go into Richterhauser, can go into Dragon, and that's pretty much it. And in this position, e5 is a theoretical move, and a not very good one. Now, the reason why e5 in general is always a very interesting topic is because there are two ways to deal with it. The number one rule of thumb is that if you can, you want to chuck the knight to f5. It's that simple. You ideally want to play knight f5 every time e5 hits. The reason behind it is because it somewhat pressures these two pawns, and it allows you to reroute the knight towards the vitally important d5 square. Also, it encourages a trade that trades off the good bishop on black side and leaves this rubbish one here. Now, right here, right now, knight f5 is not playable because of bishop takes f5, pawn takes f5, d5, and we lost the center. Yes, wink, wink, chessable course. Click up there if you haven't done so, because I have got some fun stuff there for you. So, in this case, however, you can find a way to still go for knight f5 instead of settling for moving the knight away, and that is bishop b5 check. This check really messes with black's setup because now something has to block the path towards f5, and we are winner chicken dinner. Or if the bishop goes to d7, then bishop takes knight f5, and again we can come back. There's a sharp theoretical line here with queen d7, knight f5, knight e4. I don't really want to go into that, especially because here, actually now the retreat of the knight to either e2 or b3 is also very good, because now we have got the control over the d5 square. Bishop g5 is coming, and then we will conquer d5. No counterplay whatsoever for black. So this is the starting point. Now from here on, then we can build our understanding a little bit further on about this e5 shebang. If black opts for the Najdorf, there are virtually two moves that white regularly plays that prevent e5. The number one is bishop g5, which is the main line of the Najdorf. And by the way, this is the main line of the Richterhauser too. And bishop g5 here is played for the exact same reason why it's played here, and that is to prevent e5. e5 now is met by knight f5, and after bishop takes pawn takes back on f5, you can see the very stark contrast between this and the previous position. d5 is not playable because takes and d5 hangs. End of story. Also, the other very common motive, knight takes e4, trying to pick up the f5 knight, for obvious reasons, also doesn't work because the queen is a little bit too costly for a pawn. The other move, by the way, that also denies e5 fully and forever is bishop c4. The logic again is the exact same. e5, 5 question marks, knight f5, bishop takes, pawn takes, and black again can't play d5. Good job, well done on your bike. That's it. And virtually against any other move here, so bishop e2, bishop e3, f4, g3, h3, a4, Lord knows what, whatever. It's literally all of these can be, and in fact, more often than not, are met by e5. So the logic is, for example, bishop e3, English attack e5. And we can't go to f5 anymore because take d5 and black is ahead again. White doesn't go to b3 in the English attack because it's so awesome. It's simply because there isn't a better square on the board for that poor bugger knight, which is the greatest problem for white in this whole entire setup. Which is not to say that it's bad, because black has made concessions too, but this is the way how you understand what's going on. So that's again applicable to the Rouser too, but once again, so a6 and then bishop g5 and bishop c4 sufficiently hold e5, and in both cases the main line is e6 with Scheveningen-like structures, but against everything else, e5 and then bishop e6, bishop e, knight here is one of the most stock standard setups in the Najdorf. So this is very important to establish that this is our starting point in understanding the nature of e5, both for white and black in all Sicilians. Now the same shebang works for the Richter Rouser, also known as the classical. You play bishop g5 and thus you deny e5. e5 here is a terrible move, and countless club players do this all the time, thinking we are transitioning into the Sveshnikov. No, you are not. And also countless club players on the white side transition into the Sveshnikov, although they really shouldn't be. Because, again, textbook example of a very, very bad move order and a horrendous positional mistake. Knight f5, bishop takes, pawn takes, and black has no access to e5, d5, sorry. I know I sound like a broken record, but this is how simple it is. It's all about d5. If they get it, e5 works. If they don't, they did. Done. So, how is it understood then about the Sveshnikov? Well, for that we have to go back a fair bit. So here after knight c6, d5, d4, cd, knight d, knight f6, knight c3, Sveshnikov can be reached via e5. And now knight f5 is not a good move because black has d5, undermining the knight on f5. A new motive that you really need to remember. And now if we take, they take, and this endgame is already better for black. Better development, better central structure. The whole shebang is just, black is better. End of story. And so we need to go knight b5. And after d6, bishop g5, we are in the main line Sveshnikov. And this is what I'm telling you about it. This is how people get utterly confused when they play bishop g5 here and then black goes e5, Sveshnikov. No. Now, chess is a lot more subtle and a lot harder game than just us being able to mess up move orders and still end up in the same story. Doesn't work that way. That board is gone. e5 here is a shocker because knight f5 works. That's it. And with this, we roughly covered, I believe, everything. There is the Kalashnikov with e5. When again, knight f5 doesn't work because of d5. Same motive as before. So again, the best move is knight b5. Just like in the Sveshnikov, hinting the intention of playing knight d6 check. And so pawn d6 is forced. And then white can play c4, which is one of the main lines. And knight c3 is the other main line. And that's pretty much it. This is the mystery of the e5 of the Open Sicilian, and I think this explanation covers it all. Probably I gave you a bit too many lines in a very short amount of time, but if you rewatch it and you try to understand the logic behind knight f5, when can and when can't go and why, it's all easy peasy lemon squeezy. And so student plays the game, and I will show you this because it's quite interesting, and goes knight b5. Which is a textbook case of totally confusing variations all over the place. Because now we can't get into a Sveshnikov, because after a6, knight a3, b5, this comes too soon and the bishop is not out there yet to pin the knight on f6, and so that we could jump into d5. So we already got ourselves into a very unpleasant situation. But student fights back, and I really appreciate that. Bishop e6, black is betraying his lack of knowledge on other Sicilian lines and thus fails to play b5. Bishop e6 here is far weaker because it allows the re-entry of the knight to c4, then e3, and then towards the crucial d5 square. Bishop g5 was played, not the best, because it again allows b5 sidelining the line on a3. Instead, black plays bishop e7, and now finally white plays knight c4 and manages to read out the knight before b5 could hit. And now it's beautifully awesome cruising. b5, bishop takes f6, excellent in-between move. Now bishop can't take because d6 is hanging. And gf6, knight e3 is a textbook dead lost Sveshnikov structure where neither d5 nor f5 is ever going to be possible. And in fact, more than likely, white will be able to blockade both, which is a cluster disaster for black. So black instead chose to take on c4. And here we took e7. For the record, we could have taken g7 and then read out the bishop via here. And I quite would have liked this because now this king has no future whatsoever. Although the middle is very clogged up and therefore it's unlikely that said king would become a target in the next 15 moves, it still is a long time issue. That being said, bishop takes e7 is also fine because now we are going to pick off this pawn. Says me, but not quite student, because after queen b7, for some very, very random reason, which I'm yet to discover because we haven't had a lesson over this game yet, he doesn't take c4, which, even if the pawn wasn't on c4, the most natural developing move for white would be bishop c4. It's actually quite mind-boggling, and queen b2 obviously doesn't work because this check just wins the house. So instead we played c3, which the only thing I can think of is a mouse slip, but yeah, I don't know. It is one of the weirdest moves possible to play in this position. I dare say it's a mouse slip of some sort. Knight d7, we do take on c4 now. Rook c8, queen e2, knight b6. And now we are blundering half of the board again, but these things do happen. Even to higher ranked players. We are looking at 2100 level in 1515 for the record. So we go into the simplification. And now comes a very, very cool moment that I really like as an educational point. Student plays rook to f d1. So he has a choice to bring this rook or this rook. The opponent has an f file open. Their only hope is to create some counterplay onto f2. That's it. They're pawn down, rubbish pawn structure, open file onto a backward pawn. Totally, utterly hopeless. Their only hope is that they can hurt us on f2. We have two choices to go to d1. Neither is better than the other in terms of what we are trying to do, because we try to pile up on the d file. So it totally doesn't make any difference. Yet we pick this one, thus abandoning f2. Now that really hurt me. But things get worse. Opponent plays rook c7. Very logical move. The plan is to swing across and hurt us because we have abandoned it. And at this point, having 3 minutes left on the clock out of 15:15, student panics. Typical reaction, by the way, because it looks like at this point he definitely realized that this was a stuff up, and now he tries to fix it. And very often when we make a mistake and then we try to fix it, we make an even bigger one next. Because the textbook case here that really, really is one of the most commonplace mistake on club level chess is that we are defending or kind of moving out of a threat, which is not a threat. Like right now, f2 is not hanging. Student still plays king h1 trying to get out of this attack and thus loses f2. I know that he calculated that after rook f2 he will have rook d6, which is awesome, by the way. It's really rock solid tactical calculation, but still the textbook way to lose a totally winning game is that when you have got 1/10 of the time of the opponent, with a pawn up, you go into extreme hair-raising tactical skirmishes. That's the textbook how to lose a totally one position, because from here on, there should be no tactics involved. It should be total caveman, trade-off, win the endgame. That's it. It should not be tactics at all. And the super kindergarten rook d2, defending and attacking, followed by queen e3, would have mopped up instantly. Two super basic moves, after which black has again zero hopes to create counterplay, because the queen trade is on. Queen trade results in them losing d6, or at least they have to shuffle their rooks back and then pawn up, no hope. And actually after the two rooks are pinned, I will just go c4, c5 and win d6 no matter what. If they dodge the queen trade, I play f3, same story, two dead rooks. This is how easy it is. That you just calm down, you go like, right, next they will attack me, so I have some time, because right now nothing is hanging. So I will do this to cover up f2, and then I just break the pin. And on your bike, that's it. And now it doesn't matter how much time you have, because in 15-15, the 15-second increment in a rook ending that is this much one is plenty enough against Carlsen. Not for me, for you guys, it should be totally good enough. Nay, we go king h1. And now hair-raising complications occur. And luckily, kudos to the opponent. He actually raises to the occasion. Queen b2 is a blunder. And manages to outplay the opponent as follows. Watch this. King e7, check. King e7, check. King d6, check. Rook d2. And at this point, an amazing moment. In my head, when I went through this game 40 minutes ago, as soon as I saw this move, I went crosspin. And it's quite amazing, and I really don't want to float my... I really don't want to blow my own trumpet here, but I just can't help but tell you a story about how I learn and how I understand things. When I was 12, 13, 14, one of the first chess books that was available to me back in Hungary was a collection of amazing studies. And this endgame book is called The Tactics of Endgames. Many of you probably do have it or have seen it, because it got translated to English as well by a very famous composer called Jenő Bán, a Hungarian composer. And there was a study in it that I was really fascinated by, which I'm going to sneak into this video now, which looks like this. And this is a white to move and win study. And at first it looks like white is totally dead, because the queen is pinned and we are going to lose it no matter what. But the reality is that after rook takes is forced, we have got this beautiful b6 check. And turns out that there are far more pins in this position than at first we thought. Rook can't take because the queen is hanging, so the rook is pinned. If the king goes back, then we have got mate, and so the king has to take b6, and all of a sudden a cross pin occurs. e6 hangs, has to take h6, thus giving up the queen on e7. I swear to you, as soon as this popped up on the board, I'm like, this got to be a cross pin. And then I looked at the board and I realized that the desired queen e2 doesn't work because of this check is on. And then look what happens. Check, rook d7. Now when you see this, there's no way that there is no tactics here. And of course, the beautiful queen e2 with the cross pin now mops up, because after rook takes, queen takes, we are just going to pick off the d7 rook. An absolute beauty. And the reason why I brought this study into it is because sometimes things really do come very naturally to me that don't come natural or naturally to people who learned chess as grown-ups. And I think that one of the greatest benefits of learning chess at an early age is that everything you see, your brain just soaks up and retains. And the later you learn things, and I could be wrong on this, but this is my theory anyway, things become far less intuitive, and the analogies and the connections, the associations you make with what you have seen in the past and what you see right in front of you now are far harder. That connection that I just saw here, that, oh yeah, it's gonna be crosspin, that's not me here sitting right now. That's the 13 years old me who saw this and just engraved it in my brain back then. And that's how I still remember it. If I saw that position 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't be remembering it at all. And in fact, the vast majority of tactical skills you will find with stronger players is not relying solely on calculation. It's at least 40% pattern recognition that then is backed up with the necessary calculation. I don't exactly know what I wanted to tell you with this, other than I think it's easier to learn things if there is a very, very long learning history behind you, and the earlier you start it, the better it is. And two, look at how awesome this crosspin is. Well, that's gonna be it for you for today, guys. I hope that the Sicilian E5 business was a bit of a helping thing for you, and it's going to allow you to play either side of the Sicilian far more effectively. And I also hope that the crosspin is gonna be engraved in here now, and you will never miss a beautiful motif like this again. Thanks for watching. Bye.